Hello, my name is Shaun Kirk and I am the Director of the Learning Commons at Bridgehouse School. Part of my job entails researching, writing policy documents for, advising and implementing the one-to-one iPad program for 2016. This is a video presentation of the talk that was given both at the AGM and at the information session after the Andrew Merriweather talk for those of you who were unable to attend it. In this presentation, I hope to explain why Bridgehouse has chosen to go down this route and hopefully to answer any of the questions you might have. If at the end of watching this video you have any questions, my contact details will be available. The title for this talk is Digitally Enhanced Education, a Culture Shift. Let's examine precisely what I mean by this title. Firstly, let's look at the term digitally enhanced. Often when one thinks of including technology in education, one thinks of a wholesale replacement. One thinks of rooms of computers or laptops, faces behind screens. This is not what we're aiming for at all. Digitally enhanced means we take what is already good and what is already working well, and we use digital media to make it better, to extend it. We help those who need help, and we extend those who are able to be extended. In this way, learning becomes a truly interactive and self-guided process. The reason I've gone with the subtitle, A Culture Shift, is because this is not a difficult move to facilitate. It is also not one that is going to happen overnight. It is not one that is going to be bang, everything has changed. Instead, there's going to be a gradual movement towards a different culture, a different way of doing things. We're going to take what we do well and do them better, and take things that we do not do well and fix them. Let's think about this information for a second. Think about what the world in 2029 will look like. Think about what the world looked like 5 years ago, 12 years ago. Think about how much has changed. In education, we always seek to prepare students for the life ahead of them. And yet the world around us is changing so quickly, so rapidly, and so drastically. How can we possibly do that? If you look at technology, let's use cell phone cameras, for example. The first of these came out in 2002 and it was able to take a tiny pixelated image. Now we have camera phones that are replacing DSLR cameras. People are able to go on holiday and take their entire holiday photos collection using simply their phone. How much is that going to change? Think about how much computers have become a part of our lives. Now in the past, people have always talked about that computer stuff, and they've always referred to there's a small niche market of people who are able to deal with that. My argument is that we're all computer people now. You can't just have, excuse the term, nerds running everything. And that computer stuff is no longer something that is annexed to the side. It is no longer just something happening on the periphery. Instead, it is part of our everyday lives. Everything we do, everything that happens is a technological process. It is influenced by technology. If you think it's a lot now, wait 5 years. It's only going to increase more and more and more as we stretch the capabilities of what technology is able to do. How are we preparing our students for this? My argument is that it is only by giving them the tools and teaching them the skills to access and correctly use technology that we are readily preparing them for life beyond school. And isn't that what we're supposed to be doing in the first place? This is a screenshot from an article that has been published in The Telegraph. Digital skills teaching in schools needs radical rethinks, it says report. This comes from a report that was commissioned by the House of Lords in the United Kingdom to look at the nature of society and the way it was changing, and the look at education. And as you can see, it's called the Digital Skills Committee, and they said that digital literacy should be treated as a third core subject. Now, just to clarify, core subjects in the past have been reading and writing and speaking to a large extent, but mostly reading and writing, or in languages and mathematics. You can see all of those as core subjects. Now, digital literacy is being perceived as being one of those core subjects. We cannot let students go through education without having some kind of digital literacy. And I'll get into what that means later. It also says that the internet should be regarded as a utility on par with water, electricity. So in other words, when you go to a house and you're looking at the water bill and the electricity bill and your rates bill, the internet should automatically be something you're considering as part of what you have at home. It should automatically be one of the commodities that you have. It is almost getting to the point where it's a no-brainer. You don't even think about what kind of internet is there. It just is. The UN has recently declared that the internet is going to be listed as a basic human right, and there's even talk that that's going to be extended to Wi-Fi. So think about it. Connectedness, permanent connectedness. What are we doing for our students to have this? The report insists no child should leave school without basic digital literacy. And again, that term basic digital literacy is one that is worth interpreting. It's one that's worth looking at, because what exactly is basic digital literacy? And that's something that needs to be interrogated and fleshed out as time goes on. The point is that Bridge House is trying to be a part of a global movement. We're not alone. This is not some shot in the dark in the private, sort of recesses of the Franschhoek Valley. This is something that is globally relevant and it's happening all over the world. So if we want to get onto this technological movement, why one-to-one? Why have we decided to go one device per child? There are many reasons for that. The first is one-to-one devices allow for individualized engagement. That means that each student has his or her own computer to work with. And that's what the iPad is. It's a computer. It's a tablet computer with all the functionality of that. It means that he or she is able to connect with matter in the lessons that interest him or her. It means he or she can use applications in ways that are meaningful to him or her, in ways to promote their own learning. It encourages critical thinking. Think about this scenario. Your teacher hands out a worksheet. There's very little you can do with that apart from fill it in. You might be able to use different colors or slightly different pens. You might be able to stick it in your book in a creative way, or maybe even put it in a flip file. But that's really it. With an iPad, you have the ability to go beyond that. It's no longer just a piece of paper. You have the access to the entire World Wide Web and all the applications. And when I say all the applications, I really do have to be general. There are more applications being written every second than I can possibly begin to name. And they do numerous functions. So suddenly we have all this choice, all this availability to us, all these resources to use. How are we possibly going to teach our students to make the best of this? And for me, that's an exciting opportunity. It's an opportunity to encourage them to think critically about what they're doing. How best can I answer this? Instead of just getting the information down, they have to think of the best way to do it. And finally, we speak about this exposure to essential new literacies. And let me expound on what these new literacies are. The first of the new literacies is digital literacy. And we've spoken about that in some detail previously. But digital literacy essentially is ability to grapple with and deal with digital means and media. It means you can use a computer, it means you can manipulate a computer, it means you can get computers and digital interfaces to do what it is you want them to do. And everyone needs to have an ability to work with this because our lifestyle is becoming increasingly digital. Everything is going digital where it can. Perhaps everything isn't the right word to use. Obviously, there's still things that need to stay in, shall we call it, analog format. I, for one, am still a very firm supporter of printed media. Books being hard copy, I still find it easier to read off one. Although I argue that that's because I'm used to it. I think as we become more and more used to reading off screens, that will become the norm. I do think that probably the day of the book is numbered, but we'll see. The next literacy we're going to examine is media literacy. And I want you to think about every time you've logged into the internet or Googled something. You don't get one result, or two or three, or even 20. You get millions, hundreds of thousands of responses to what you've searched. How do you deal with this influx of information? What do you do? How do you know to select which is right for you? How do you know to discern a good source from a bad one? A good example to use here would be YouTube. Did you know that more footage is uploaded to YouTube every 24 hours than has been produced by the top 3 television broadcasters in the United States in the past 60 years? I think the latest stat was something like every second, 24 hours of footage is put onto YouTube. That is an astonishing amount of information. And how do we get our students to know how to deal with that? How to respond to that much information? This is something that is unprecedented. This is something that none of us, no previous generation has had to deal with, this degree of information influx. And so it is critically important that our students are trained, are shown how to make the best of media, how to access information and media that is important to them and relevant to them and powerful and good quality. On top of this, we also have to teach our students not just to be good consumers of media, but excellent producers of media. Because if they're entering a world where there is so much information and so much influx, how do you make sure your stuff is seen? How do you make sure that others read or look at or watch or consume what it is you're producing? Students need to be taught this. They need to be shown how to make products that are excellent, how to make themselves understood and relatable. They need to market themselves. They have to be able to create powerful digital selves. And this leads me to my next point. Social literacy. And it is indeed a literacy. Students need to know how to read social environments. They need to know when to speak up. They need to know when to listen. They need to know how to listen meaningfully so that they are able to learn from their peers, so that they are able to be empathetic and responsive people. In terms of sales, it makes sense. How do you make sure that your clients support you? You listen to what they need and you make sure you meet their demands. This is something that should come up in social training. Socialization is incredibly important. It should be an essential part of learning how to be a human being, and that's what school should be teaching you. Digital media is often criticized as being a means of decreasing social interaction. People are always complaining about kids just being on their phones and staring at screens. Let me point out that a good deal of that screen time is spent chatting with other people, and while yes, it might not be as rich and warm and engaging as speaking to someone face to face, it does mean they are speaking to others, they are interacting. But how are they interacting? Who has ever sat down with someone and said, this is how you text message? This is the convention for using a chat room. These are some of the things you should be doing when you speak to someone online or on a screen. No one is doing it. Students are being just left to do it. They're being left to deal with it. And that has been the problem for so long. That is why computers and cell phones and tablets are seen as toys, why students are abusing their use. Because no one is showing them how to do it. They're being left to get on with it. It's just like we spoke earlier about those computer people with that computer stuff. You can't have that mentality anymore. It's just too dangerous. Social literacy also includes social media literacy. How to engage meaningfully online. And I do mean meaningfully. While Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn are all potentially dangerous because you're sharing your information with the world essentially, they are also the most powerful self-marketing tools available. Most of the leading corporations around the world no longer advertise positions in classifieds. Instead, they have people whose sole job it is to find people via LinkedIn or any other personal marketing site. Think about that. There are jobs out there that if you do not have a LinkedIn profile, you are not able to get. You are not in the running for it because you will never even know it existed. Why would a company put out an advert and get hundreds, potentially thousands of applications for a position that they must sift through when they could simply contact only those they really liked? They could find the CVs they wanted rather than having to hope they were being sent to them. If we're not training our students to create these social profiles, how to get themselves on LinkedIn properly, how to make the right decisions about their social media presence, we are doing them a disservice. We are closing them off to a world of potential opportunity. The iPad is a brilliant tool for this. Because of its permanent connectedness, if you have Wi-Fi in the correct facilities, it means students can update them when and as necessary. It also means that information can come to them quickly. The iPad also has a range of creative applications which can be used to enhance the digital presence. And because they're connected virtually all the time, they're able to become more familiar with the online world and learn what the trends are and adapt their profiles accordingly. The next literacy that we're going to examine is global literacy. In the past, we've been fairly limited by the places we can interact with because of locality. Contacting people overseas is expensive, it takes time, you have to worry about time differences, you have to worry about phone lines, etc., etc. Now, because of the internet and because of facilities like Skype, FaceTime, VoIP, we are able to interact with the rest of the world fairly easily. Thus, the world has become a smaller place. We all know what's happening around us if we're informed and if we stay connected. It's important for our students to be able to engage on this level. They need to know about the world out there. They need to know about what is needed in the world beyond here. Anyone who knows international business will know that South Africa is a relatively unique environment and will know that skills that are necessary here are not necessarily the same skills that are needed elsewhere. If we truly want to make our students globally literate, globally relevant, we need to make sure that we are exposing them to the opportunities that lie out there. We need to help them access the information and find out what there is available to them and make the best choices about that information. The final literacy is one that is very close to my own heart, and that is environmental literacy. And again, I do believe that literacy is the right word to use here. We need to teach students how to engage with, how to read their environmental impact. We have only got one earth on which to live, and we need to help our students make the right choices, to make sustainable, correct choices, to make the world a place that they are able to live in with comfort and health and happiness. I think it is imperative that we teach students to make the right choices about the environment, to protect it, to preserve it for themselves and for the generations to come. The device that we're going to be using for the one-to-one program is the Apple iPad. Some people understand the term iPad to be a generic term for any tablet computer, but we are being very specific in that it is the Apple computer iPad. The minimum specifications that we're recommending for the one-to-one program is either the iPad Air 32 gigabytes Wi-Fi or the iPad Air 2 64 gigabyte Wi-Fi. The reason for the increase in size for the iPad Air 2 is that it does not come in a 32 gigabyte configuration, and we've decided that 16 gigabytes is too small a device for school purposes. This is because, while the device may say 16 gigabytes, in reality you are ending up with about 7 because of operating systems and various other files that the device needs to run. And also, when you run an update, it takes between 4 and 5 gigs, which means you essentially have 2 gigs of working space, which is just not sufficient for school purposes. The Air is last year's model, and it's still perfectly fine. It's the system that we've given to all our teachers so far, and it's a very capable little machine. The Air 2 obviously is a one step up from that, and the increased storage capacity is certainly not going to hurt your child. It's going to mean more space for things, which is great. The Air 2 is a slightly faster processing speed. Its camera is a little bit better. It also has the touch identification functionality, which means that your child can use his or her fingerprint to unlock the device, making it a little bit more secure. But as I said, either of these devices is fine as your minimum spec. The reason we've not gone with the mini is that it's been found to be too small. It's difficult to type on it. A lot of the apps are often not optimized properly. It's difficult to select some of the smaller buttons, especially on web pages, and depending on how the app has been designed. And also some applications don't work quite as well as they would in a bigger configuration. Please note this is the minimum specification. You are, of course, welcome to go bigger than this if you wish to. You can also select to purchase the cellular models, should you wish to do so. However, it's important to know that cellular devices cannot be covered under the school's firewall program. Bridgehouse has a very effective and significantly adjusted firewall to protect students and staff members, and cellular cannot be controlled under that firewall. Through the Wi-Fi system, we can block illicit websites, we can block inappropriate material, and we can block harmful content. With cellular, we have none of those controls. It is highly recommended that you do not encourage your students, your children, shall I say, to make use of cellular devices while on campus. Make use of the school's Wi-Fi, and which is across the entire campus, and they will be just fine. If you have Wi-Fi at home, there's probably no reason to get the cellular, whereas if you don't, the cellular might help you. It might be the type of connection you want to use when you're at home. So many of you may be asking, why have we gone with Apple? And let's look at why we've done this. The first reason is that they're easy to use. Apple pride themselves on having an intuitive interface. I always say to people that when you open the box of an iPad, you'll notice that there is no instruction manual. There's a card indicating the buttons, but other than that, no, figure it out as you go along. The interface is deliberately very intuitive. And we found that students pick it up quite easily, and staff members are picking it up quite quickly and easily. And you too, parents, will be able to pick it up very easily, figure out how things work. There are limited functions that you can do, and so when you don't know how to do something, there's sort of one of 4 ways to do anything. The next reason is the consistency of the interface. One of the biggest criticisms against Apple is how controlled they are in terms of how they do things. Their interface is very tailored to their purposes. Other operating systems like Android and even to some extent Windows can be customized to a certain extent. They can be adapted as the person sees necessary. Apple have done away with that. They've said, no, this is how it looks, this is how it runs. You can't customize the icons, you can't really customize the animations or anything like that. And that means that everything works. And that means that everything always looks the same, everything always functions in the same way. And this is necessary in a school environment, because if we need teachers or students to be able to recognize icons for apps or recognize how to do something, it needs to be the same device so that the instruction can be clear and consistent. There is an extensive, and the word I'm focusing on here, curated app store. Apple is very conscious of the amount of stuff that is on their app store, and so they are constantly checking it for quality. Yes, there are a lot of things on there that maybe aren't brilliant quality, but they tend to get weeded out fairly quickly. But what's important is the fact that they are gathering things together. They are making a point of finding apps that work for education specifically, or for science or business. You name it, they are working on it. They have teams dedicated to this, and that's something we really are very appreciative of in our context. The other important fact to consider is that the school has an existing infrastructure to support iPads. iPads were the first tablet computers to be launched, and the school got in fairly early with purchasing these iPads to see their educational capacity. As a result, we've been able to buy applications over the years. We've created an infrastructure. We have a system in place that functions to run the iPads. To introduce a new tablet would mean we need to recreate that whole backend, learn how to run that, test it, etc., etc. Whereas with the Apple, it's all there already. We can go with it. We've spent the money, we've made the investment, and so it seems to make sense to continue with that investment. The other is proven aftermarket support. From our suppliers that we've used, we've found amazing service. We've been very pleased with how well they've done things. Any errors, and they have been minimal, have been treated really quickly, been sorted out, no problem at all. And we're very happy with the quality of the product, which is the next point, actually. It is a quality product. You certainly are getting what you pay for. Bear in mind that when you purchase a brand new iPad, you get a whole lot of software completely for free, and that's free for life. Every update, every new amendment to it is completely free. The operating system is completely free. Every time the new system comes out, you can have it. It's no problem. They have extensive support on the internet. I've had to make 3 calls before to Apple, and it's a toll-free number, and you still connect to international people, and they've helped me without trouble at all. So it's a very, very impressive system. Let's look a bit more at this existing infrastructure that we have. What do I mean by this? So the other thing to notice is that the entire campus and all 3 boarding houses are fully covered by Wi-Fi. The boarding houses are not yet covered by Ruckus, but they will eventually be. But the campus, the classrooms, all the teaching facilities are covered by enterprise-grade Wi-Fi. It's the same Wi-Fi you'll find in shopping malls. That the MWeb has done this mass rollout. We're using the same company, and we've got gigabit transfer speeds on the wireless. And what that means, for those of you who are not familiar, is that, okay, so in the past, Wi-Fi speeds were typically much slower than plugging an actual cable into the computer. With this wireless, the speed is, if the iPad is capable of it, fast enough to do that transfer as fast as a cable would be. So very, very fast, and when we upgrade the internet, we will be able to make full use of it with this Wi-Fi. The other is that all classroom computers are equipped with Air Server, wireless projection software. And what this means is that we've set up the infrastructure to be able to present from the iPad as a teaching device. The iPad can be used as a smartboard replacement. And it's an incredibly powerful tool to be used in this context because it has a far broader range of capacities than the other product might have. So the Air Server enables that to happen wirelessly, so the teacher can walk around the class, present what's happening from his or her iPad. She's not bound to the front of the room. He doesn't have to stand in front, turn his back on the class when he's teaching, etc. The other bit of infrastructure we have is Turnitin, which is the originality scanning and digital marking software. We have a license with the company, which means that we can train our students on how to make sure that their content is completely original. It's not, people tend to talk about Turnitin as a plagiarism scanner. It's not about that. It's not about catching people out. It's about helping people to make the right decisions about how to correctly attribute everything they're doing, how to reference correctly, etc., etc. So we have that infrastructure in place. This is more applicable to the college than to the prep, though. We've also already made a significant number of purchases of educational apps on the Bridgehouse account, and so we want to keep manipulating this and making use of this where we can. On the horizon coming up, what do we plan for this? Because we're only at the tip of the iceberg here with this iPad program. We really are. There's so much capacity and ability available to us. How are we going to make proper use of this? The first thing to know is that we are already in the process of developing online course content. That means that we've got content available for students to access from anywhere. We are registered with Apple iTunes U as an official school, which means that we can have limitless numbers of students taking part in our courses online. And I'm personally very involved in setting that up and training teachers to put their content online, which means if your child is ill, for example, and the teacher happens to have created an online course or have put the content online, your child, should I say, will be able to access this information from home, will be able to use it from home, and they won't miss out. It also means we can start to do things like flipping the classroom, but more information on that will be coming later. We're going to be producing podcasts, audiobooks, have the students read their favorite books and start to build up our own library of audiobooks, podcasts which are like radio channels effectively, so we're going to have that going out. This is also part of our community outreach. Eventually, we want to be sharing this information with the rest of the Franca community and hopefully the rest of South Africa. That's very exciting, getting our students out there. And then also we're going to be generating our own EPUBs, which are not just books behind glass, but they're interactive texts that we can use. You can put videos into it, pictures, self-marking quizzes. Really, the sky is the limit with these books. So they become interactive, engaging texts rather than just static pieces of information. And the staff and the students are going to be generating this, so it becomes relevant and pertinent to our environment. Very exciting. If you have any questions after having watched this, and I do thank you for watching this, please feel free to contact me on any of these fora. If you go to Twitter and you follow my handle, you can see I post daily information. I do a newspaper, inverted commas, which just collates all my Twitter feeds together and creates a little page of what's happening in the world of educational technology and education in general. My LinkedIn profile is there at the bottom if you want to connect there. And then I have a blog that I contribute to occasionally. I'm not as good at that as I should be, but if you want to read, you can find that information there. Otherwise, please feel free to email me if you've got any queries. I'm always happy to answer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.